Welcome to Innovation 19. I'm Daniel Anstandig. Today, we're talking with Mariana Acuña-Acosta, and Mariana is a technologist, connector, entrepreneur. She's worked everywhere from Sony ImageWorks to HBO. She was a pioneer in her own hometown of Mexico City, where she founded the first VR and 360 video production and branding agency, Jolt VR. And she also is a co-founder of Glassbox Technologies, where she creates technology developing tools for virtual production using XR and AI and transforming the way that filmmaking is done today. Mariana, it's such a pleasure to meet you.
Oh, thank you, Daniel. Likewise. Thank you for having me.
So tell me about your company, Glassbox. Who was it created for, and what are the goals for the company in the years to come?
So Glassbox was co-founded between Norman, who's currently in Taiwan, and myself almost 5 years ago, because we saw the potential of virtual production. But we realized there was a lack of off-the-shelf solutions for content creators of small to medium facilities, or whether you were a one-man band. For them to be able to access these tools for virtual production, because usually it's a very expensive pipeline, expensive productions, things like that, and we really wanted to democratize the tools, and that's what we set out to do. Now, since then, we have really expanded, and it's not only the one-man bands and independent content creators, but also medium level animation studios, big studios that are doing feature animation or episodic animation, episodic TV, that are doing VR experiences, that are doing post-vis, tech-vis, pre-vis, etc. So really, it's open to all kinds of content creators on the media and entertainment space.
So if you haven't heard of virtual production, could you give us a little introduction into what virtual production is and kind of how it's evolved through the pandemic?
Yeah, absolutely. So in its simplest terms, virtual production is where the physical world meets the virtual world. If people ever saw the making of Avatar, and they saw, all the actors with the motion capture suits and the helmets, and, James Cameron with a virtual camera, that technology has existed since a long time ago. But of course, the hardware and the software needed to have virtual production in your projects was really cost prohibitive. But thanks to the power of game engines, and kind of like the advent of VR a few years ago, kind of really coming into the mainstream, focus, if you will, that has really opened the door for virtual production to become more accessible to people. So you can also think about it as like, if you're in a stage, it can be, just like a sound stage, if you will. And then you have somebody that is using something like an iPad or an iPhone, and that is used as now in this day and age, that is used as your magic windows, your window into the virtual world, and you're able to see your scenes. And so you really are moving the costs and the iterations from post-production into pre-production. So you're able to visualize your scenes, you're able to iterate faster, you're able to bring more control to creatives, as opposed to green screens and tennis balls and that sort of thing.
Sure. Well, but I could imagine that this creates all new opportunities for different types of set designers. I mean, now, if you're thinking about the setting of a movie, or if you're thinking about the perfect shot, you have a totally different skill set for a designer in the virtual production world than you would in the traditional film production world, right?
Yeah, absolutely. However, I mean, if you've been working in the traditional filmmaking, process, you definitely are able to transfer your skills into whatever form and shape that is, and into virtual production. And it's really exciting as well, because now you see full virtual art departments, virtual location scoutings, virtual production designers, and then you're basically doing all that. You're doing the set dressing, you're creating the assets, you're creating all the props. The only difference is you're doing all this virtually. So yeah, it has opened up a whole slew of new opportunities for businesses, for creators, for technologists.
So as a pioneer in this field of virtual reality, what did you anticipate VR being like in 2021 when you first started? And have we met your expectations in 2021?
Well, I think that VR still has a lot of growing up to do, but just in terms of, being mainstream and a lot more people adopting it, as a visualization medium, as a gaming medium, just like you do any other device, correct? Like a tablet and whatnot, or a TV or a computer, et cetera, et cetera. But I think VR has really grown. You remember, what was it, 2 years ago, that they were saying that VR was dead, and it's absolutely not dead. And of course, the pandemic has really made virtual reality come back into being center stage of conversations, because you've been able to go to virtual events and virtual concerts and be able to meet in virtual reality with your coworkers and go through, still buy houses and maybe do a walkthrough of your house, and, using VR for architectural visualization. And it's grown also in, automobile, because you're able to put on a headset and maybe do your configuration of your car. I mean, it simply really opened up the door more for specifically for concerts and, again, your meetings in the office and whatnot. So I feel like on that front, VR has done really well this year. My expectations of VR have always been, I'm a firm believer, and I will always continue to do so. I believe it's the rest of the world that needs to catch on, right? Yeah. A little more on that front.
What VR or AR headset do you find to be your favorite? Do you have a favorite?
Well, I have for work. I've tried, a lot of them, but of course I have the Quest, and I still have the Oculus Rift, and I have many iterations of the different Vives, because those are very, they're very good for work in terms of resolution and all that. Mm-hmm. So I don't really have a favorite. I like the idea of using them all and being able to share that passion with, our clients, some of which, may have not been wanting to do VR previously.
I'm fascinated by your company because you're creating tools to do virtual production, and you are already thinking down the road into virtual reality and AR. And I'm wondering where these two worlds meet. At what point does a film producer in Des Moines, who is creating a production for the local film festival, at what point do you see them having the same access to the type of hardware that's available now in Hollywood? And what point do you see VR production kind of becoming democratized, or is that the mission that you're on?
Well, that's part of the mission that we're on. I mean, not only using VR, but just virtual production as a whole, because it really saves a lot of time and therefore money when in terms of your productions. And I think every producer, all over whatever film industry you're in, meaning, if you're in film festivals or if you're just into producing and whatnot, you should really look into it, because the cost savings, the creativity that you're bringing back, the ability to be able to just visualize, be immersed in a scene, etc. That is just huge. And I feel, it's like film has gone from black and white and being silent to being in color, and then sound, to from optical to digital, right? The visual effects and everything else. So it's just a transition. Like technology will continue to advance, and filmmaking is just, you use the technology because you use film cameras, you use all these other different, you're using the technology all the time. So it's kind of like you have to adapt to what comes next, because at the end of the day, it'll just be better for whatever it is that you're doing. So the tools are already accessible. Everything is there. I mean, it's very cheap now to buy a headset as well. It's just a matter, I think, of bringing more of that education into everyone all over the United States. For example, as you're saying, like this, a film producer in Des Moines may not even really know what's out there, right? And that's just like from an education perspective. And on that sense, I think that if we were teaching, kids, or if film schools were more up to speed in what's happening in technology, then this could be a total game changer, because then it's accessible to really everyone. Which is what we're after, which is just democratizing the tools and democratizing the technology for everyone, and that people don't feel alienated or don't feel that it's completely inaccessible.
So how do you see production workflows changing from traditional film production?
Well, what I've seen is a real shift into the amount of, bandwidth, if you want to call it that, or the amount of budget that goes into pre-production now, because virtual production is really heavy on the pre-production stage. So you have to put a lot more upfront, meaning by building environments or building assets and then just making all the layouts and the blockage, etc. However, everything that you're bringing into the pre-production stages, you will be saving in terms of time and cost in post-production. So I'm seeing a shift there where for the past 20 years, what we've seen is the post-production budget is more than half sometimes of the, for the full film budget. Whereas now that's changing. There's a shift now into how much budget goes into pre versus post. So therefore, you're really just reducing the time that you spend in post, while at the same time, when you're going to principal photography, you're also able to reduce those times because you've basically been able to visualize exactly what your, VR experience or your short film or your episodic TV episode is going to look like. And that is huge. And I foresee that this shift is going to continue to move on that front, where like pre-production is bigger, and then production is a little bit smaller, and then the budget and time on post-production just gets really reduced.
So how are you finding talent who understand this space? Because this is definitely kind of leading edge in the media and entertainment industry. Software developers are hard to recruit to begin with. And now you're talking about a really niche, very specialized field. So when you are recruiting talent and you're talking to potential new engineering talent for your company, how do you think about that? And how do you spot the people that are really going to be able to kind of move the tech forward in a meaningful way?
Well, the good thing is there's a lot of gamers out there, because at the end of the day, that's also something that has happened that is really incredible. Whereas, the film, the animation, the game people are now all sharing ideas and sharing technology, which before, that wasn't possible at all. So the great thing is there's a lot of gamers that are really interested in virtual production, or game developers that are interested in virtual production. And of course, they've been doing development in C++ and C# and doing visual scripting and whatnot. And it's really easy to transfer those skills into virtual production, because at the end of the day, you're using game engines, and maybe you're connecting other DCC tools. And so there are a lot of developers, game developers, that want to switch into virtual production.
So many of our Innovation 19 listeners are in the technology or entertainment sectors. And I'm wondering if there's a piece of software or hardware that Innovation 19 listeners should know about that probably don't know about yet.
Well, of course, our tools, Glassbox tools, Dragonfly, Beehive, and Live Client. And then, of course, there's, Unreal Engine, which I'm sure you listeners know about. And then, it really depends on what they're after, right? Because if they have an iPad or an iPhone, they can already start kind of diving into being a virtual cinematographer, because now we're all, content creators, just like it's in our pockets. So yeah, I would say that our tools for sure, Unreal Engine. And then if they're not into virtual reality, I would say definitely try it, because you'll be very pleasantly surprised, especially if you're in a city or a country where the pandemic restrictions are still making it really hard to connect with other people's physically.
So when you think about today, and there are billions of videos available online, a lot, there's virtually any type of content you want on YouTube, and we're connected to video through our phones. When do you see that same type of adoption happening with smart glasses or with augmented reality in our future? Is that a mid-2020s thing, or is that like a 2050 thing?
No, that is definitely a 2021 type thing, right? It wouldn't be hard at all. At the end of the day, we already have this type of enabled devices to connect with each other at all times. It's in our back pocket. So now if you have something like this AR glasses, for example, of course, you're going to be able to play Pokemon Go in the same place, or you're going to be able to, look at the same menu, or the same overlay of the menu at the same time. So I think that is already happening. And I think that's definitely a 2021 prediction, or rather fact.
Now we just have to have more content in this space.
Yes, absolutely. Because you're mentioning YouTube. Yeah, of course, there's millions of videos, because YouTube started, what was it, like 1998, 1996? Almost at the same time as when, everybody started to use the internet. So And back then there was definitely not the amount of content that there is today. And then of course this has completely evolved.
Well, what's so interesting about the field that you're in and that you've been in now for some time is that there's this kind of development happening that isn't specific to any geography. When you think about how music or movies have evolved, you have these geographic epicenters where the arts explode. Mexico City, Los Angeles, Nashville, New York, Paris. You have these art and these renaissances that happen on a fairly localized basis. And when you think of AR and VR and the production tools that you've created, you're really talking about a renaissance happening non-locally with a community that's spread out across the globe. So, where do people go if they're interested and they want to be inspired and they want that kind of connection with other artists in this industry? Where do they go to get started and to get immersed in the AR, VR, and virtual production world?
Well, there's definitely, first of all, like the easiest thing to do is join the Facebook groups. There's an Unreal Engine virtual production group. There's a filmmakers in virtual production, real-time filmmakers group in Facebook. And of course, there's a lot of women in VR. Just look them up on Facebook, because then what we do, for example, is there's Allspace VR, and we usually do events every week or every other week, or at least once a month, where we all join. Everybody's in their living room, but we join all these different worlds, and we've even been able to see worlds that were created by others, like a VR Burning Man and whatnot. So this is a great resource to really find out. Like, first start with Facebook, and then from there you can definitely connect with others and see all the virtual events that are happening now. When it comes to AR, if you're living in Los Angeles right now, well, we're still very much kind of like in the continue to stay at home phases, etc. Right. But you can definitely talk with people and kind of share some of those AR experiences and give your feedback. And then, of course, if your listeners, I'm not sure if they know about the New Frontier program from Sundance, but it was all virtual this year, and it was incredible. We were able to sort of buy hot dogs and do on together, and go on walks, and then sing karaoke together, and meet at all these virtual galleries and do the VR experiences together. And it was like a really incredible moment for me, because the New Frontier program specializes in all these emerging technologies, new ways of creating content, and they really went all out in 2021 to make sure that we all still are able to see all this type of content while at the same time be connected. And it was a really easy experience. You could even go, WebXR, so you didn't even need a headset, and that was definitely huge. So highly recommend. I would say those two things would be my favorite on the top list.
Amazing. Well, it is such a pleasure to talk with you, and I love your vision for this space, and I can just feel energetically how involved and how excited you are about the future in this space. So I love talking with you, and I really appreciate you joining the podcast today.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you very much. And yeah, let's all continue bringing these emerging technologies to the forefront of everyone we know.
Yes, let's do it.
Thank you for listening to Innovation 19. Like many other podcasters, we're using Post by Futuri to create, publish, and optimize this episode. Learn more about why some of the world's top brands rely on Post to power their podcasts at futurimedia.com.